Hello, I hope that everybody can see me. My name is Sophie Zeldin O'Neill and I am the Deputy Membership Editor here at The Guardian, based in London, but work very closely with colleagues across the three main territories that we have, which are in the US and Oz, as well as our foreign correspondents. You are joining me at a very interesting time, obviously, very ever-changing situation that we've got on our hands at the moment. So it's an interesting time to be talking about our proposition. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how we manage to get people to pay for something that they could otherwise get for free, which is quite an interesting topic, and one that we have been working on for sort of 3 years to really finesse. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can, hopefully you'll be able to start seeing my presentation. So when we started to develop our proposition for this, the first thing that we wanted to make sure that we really emphasise was that The Guardian is quite a unique organisation. We started right back to basics. We went back to The Guardian's founding constitution and we started to look at what C.P. Scott, who was a major editor in the early part of the 20th century, what he said about The Guardian. And he founded what we call the Scott Trust, which laid out a number of principles that would determine how we covered news stories and what The Guardian's place in the world would truly be. So he really emphasised the need for independence. Now, editorial independence is something that seems increasingly hard to come by in the current media market. It means that we don't have any shareholders. We don't have any people tapping our reporters on the shoulder, telling them what they can and can't cover. So it's quite a unique thing. It's quite, we don't have any big proprietors, billionaire owners, and it's quite a special thing. So this means that we have the freedom to pursue whichever topics feel close to our heart, whichever we feel particularly passionate about. So it became something that we really wanted to make sure was in the bloodstream of all of The Guardian's coverage. And it's actually something that our editor-in-chief, Catherine Viner, talked about when she wrote down what she believed was our purpose going forward into the 21st century. So she laid out some of the principles as inspired by C.P. Scott's work and as inspired by The Guardian's place in the world over the last 100 years. So the first part was to report fairly on people as well as power, to make sure that we gave voice to the voiceless, and we reported on communities which otherwise weren't seeing very much coverage for their plight, for the issues that they were facing, for the real world impact of big political decisions. The second part of this was ideas, not just critiques. Kath, she's somebody that is a massive advocate of hope and imagination, somebody who really believes that when we report on the news, we should also come to it with a degree of imagination and promise, and we should come up with solutions, not just critique those in power. The third part was to be meaningful, was to report the truth, of course, but also to report on issues in a way that showed the whole breadth of perspectives, that showed how these events came about, that portrayed some of the context around them, and that became a really important part of what we do. The fourth part was to diversify, to make sure that we had a representative newsroom, to make sure that the communities that we were discussing and covering represented a whole spectrum of different peoples, from different genders to different parts of the world, different races, to make sure that The Guardian was not just an English paper, it had a presence all over the world, and we've got lots of foreign correspondents, as you know. We've got the three major territories. Diversification has been a massive thing that we've really continued to push for. The fifth part was to collaborate. We've got a series of investigations that will be going live in the next few months, and we continue to work with lots of organisations all over the world. I'm sure some of you are familiar with projects that we've worked on, such as Cambridge Analytica and the Daphne project, which was looking at a corruption scandal in Malta, and that was something that we did in collaboration with a number of European publications. We think that if there's a story that's important to tell, that it should get to as many different readers as possible. And if that means working with other organisations to get the truth out there, then so be it. And that's a really important part of what we do. So with these 5 guiding principles, Kath set out what she called her purpose. And it was something that she wanted to really have embedded in the sort of background of thinking around commissioning for all of our content. And it's really become something important. So in articulating why The Guardian is important in the world, and moreover why it's unique, this became a really important part of our membership proposition, setting out why we were different. Again, this is just making sure that we understand the 5 principles. As I've explained, we'll develop ideas that will help improve the world, collaborate with readers. The other important thing about collaboration is that sometimes it has to come from readers as well. We've got a huge amount of knowledge within the ranks of our readers. We've got people writing in with all sorts of ideas, and we quite often will work with readers as well. We'll also make sure that the feedback loop is completed. So, you know, if a reader writes to us and tells us they want to see something different in our coverage, we will, more often than not, we will respond. We'll either email them and say thank you very much for already working on it, or it'll be something that we'll pursue further. So those are how they are enacted. So in practice, as well, we didn't just want to, we wanted to make sure that we put our money where our mouth is, basically. So in terms of advertising, we've got an example here of the announcement that we made a few months ago, which was to ban advertising from fossil fuel firms. And this was something that we felt was really important in terms of making sure that the ideas and principles that Kath laid out ran through the bloodstream of The Guardian and weren't just something that we spoke about in our coverage, but was something that we lived and breathed. So a lot of readers wrote in and said, you know, it's all very well writing these articulate pieces about the climate crisis, but how about making sure that when I read them, there isn't an advert next to them that seems to suggest that fossil fuel firms are something that we should support. So we looked at this and we decided to change the way we work in terms of advertising, and now all of our advertising is vetted, obviously, extremely carefully. We don't think that it's the fact that it possibly does cost us a bit of money to do it this way, but we think that it's far better to make sure that we take a holistic approach to what we do, and that our principles run in everything we do. So that was really important. I mean, other examples of the kind of thing that we would do here are we've implemented biodegradable packaging for our weekend supplements, so that we're not using more waste when our newspapers go out at the weekend. So it's small ways like that in which we're just kind of making sure that this thinking is consistent. A fair and valuable exchange for a trusted service. So again, I don't know if you guys recognise this lady. This is Carol Cadwallader, and she is one of the Observer, which is our sister paper. She's one of the main correspondents that we have working on the news desk over there. She focuses on investigative coverage. And Cambridge Analytica, which I mentioned, a really important, big landmark editorial project for us. That looked at data. That was a very much a collaborative effort. Carol looked at data sets from lots of different moments across the EU referendum and in the lead up to it, and realised that all was not quite as it seemed, that there had been a lot of input from different political parties, that there had been bias within the advertising of a lot of those the moments in the run up to the referendum, and it wasn't something that she was very happy about. Started investigating it. It was essentially a voter fraud that she was able to expose after several years worth of work. So that was a really important project for us. Just going to move on to the next one. So as you can see here, sister paper, The Observer. We've got this was a massive project as well, the Putin project. The Windrush project, obviously something that the Guardian's become very well known for, which resulted in the resignation of the Home Secretary. We managed to finally, after again many years of work, a lot of investigative effort, we managed to get justice for some of the people that were part of what's called the Windrush generation. And I think the thing is about investigative journalism, the thing that the Guardian does, which perhaps others maybe don't have the resource to do, or they don't invest in quite so much as we do, is really the investigative reporters really embed themselves in the communities that they're talking about. They really take the time to carefully go over the facts, collect the data sets, talk to the requisite people, and each, I mean, these are 3 examples of investigations that will have taken years. I remember one of our investigative journalists, Gary Young, who recently left the Guardian but worked with us for many, many years, always said that it was worth getting to know the people involved in these stories as people. You know, we're not into ambulance chasing. We're not into kind of spur of the moment decisions regarding what we publish. We're into carefully unpicking a story, putting the resource in where we can. There was a project that we worked on called Beyond the Blade, looking at knife crime. And again, Gary was somebody that went and spoke to the mother of a perpetrator in a knife crime incident, as well as a victim. He wanted to understand how it had come about, and why more had not been done by the local authorities. He didn't just want to report on a surface level that these crimes were being committed. So something that's quite important to us. We do put a lot of resource into our investigative work, a force for good, and let's be honest, we need as much good as possible, and this man hasn't been helping hugely. I think the thing with Trump that's been quite difficult is, obviously we don't want to report with a huge degree of bias, but what we do always want to do in everything is to hold power to account wherever possible. So if Trump says something and that doesn't match up with his actions, that's something we want to talk about. Likewise, we have the protest here over the schools protest. Sorry, so it's we wanted to go and talk to the students. We wanted to understand their perspective as well as that of the authorities. It's never something that we want to do to particularly editorialise our news content. We have a comment section, we have a letters section, we do have our leaders, but in our news coverage, we just want to make sure that we are holding power to account wherever possible and making sure that we can be a force for good in the world, and maybe a place where you can find some good solutions as well to what's happening in the world. And so that brings us quite nicely round to our subscriptions, contributions offering, and the different ways in which you can support The Guardian. So as we said at the beginning, this is something that you could get for free. Anybody can read our journalism, regardless of their background, their income, where they are in the world. Just need access to the website. Obviously, if they're in the UK, then they can read the print edition of the paper as well. And we've also got our weekly edition, which goes out internationally as a magazine. So just to show you the kind of ways that, the main ways that you can support The Guardian in just a sort of overview and a snapshot. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the different ways in which somebody might make a contribution. So that could be a single contribution. It could be £4, £8, could be £1 million. Depending on what situation people are in. And, we will see people give just a couple of quid, and that's great. And we'll see people, even leaving us money in their will as a legacy contribution, which is wonderful as well. We'll see people giving big amounts, and it varies hugely. The cadence as well can be determined when they come to this screen: single, monthly, annual. Here you can see the premium edition of the app, which we offer as well, which is just a kind of beautiful, very sleek way to view our app edition, if that's what you prefer. And of course, we've got Guardian subscriptions. So that could be in the form of a simple paper subscription, if that's how you prefer to read your news. There's paper and digital if you want a bit of a mix as well. And the digital edition is something that most people access on their iPad or a similar kind of tablet device, and it's a newspaper-like experience. This image in the middle is an example of one of the campaigns that we run to kind of explain to readers how we're funded and to encourage them to give to us. So that's just an overall kind of snapshot of the different ways in which people can actually support us, depending on what kind of format they read us in and how they want to receive their news. So a massive landmark announcement that we were able to make in spring last year, which was that for the first time, our revenue from readers had actually overtaken that from advertisers. You know, it was a massive sort of coup for us. We're in a landscape, obviously, where you know, across the media, advertising revenue had been falling for a number of years. We had been looking for a solution, and it felt very much by the time we got to spring last year that solution had been found. And you know, fingers crossed, touch wood, we're still doing well there. So how do we do it? How do we actually go about converting readers into supporters and moving them down the loyalty funnel? Well, the first part of this is testing. Test, as we've heard a lot in the news recently. We started off, I think it was, as I say, sort of 3.5 years ago, and we started off with a traditional marketing channel, basically explaining to readers, and I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this as well, if you use it, if you like it, why not pay for it? It's only fair. This was a very early iteration of the kind of work that we were doing to educate readers about the Guardian's independence, about our funding models, about what we actually want to achieve in the world. So readers would see this within an article, they'd click on it, and then they could go to one of the pages that you've just seen. Back then, it was actually a simpler offering. They could give a few pounds to us, and it was a very much a hands-off transaction. It still is actually quite a hands-off transaction. Readers will give to us and expect nothing in return, other than just to know that we exist, which seems to be enough for a lot of readers. If they do want something back for that, they can obviously get the offerings that I've explained. From this early test that we ran, a bit of an experiment, because obviously it's quite intrusive within the article, so a 90 times improvement, and we developed it into this offering, which we see here. It's a native unit that you probably see at the bottom of lots of articles. Right. The thing about this, which was quite interesting as well, I should say, is that it really went into a lot more detail to explain the Guardian's identity and what we actually stand for. I don't know if you can read that, but there's a paragraph here that explains about our editorial independence and why that's important in making sure that we hold power to account. So we went into more detail and we experimented a lot further with language. So we started off with this simple message: since you're here, we have a favour to ask. A polite opening tone that invokes curiosity and reaches out to readers but isn't pushy. So we wanted this language within the whole of this space to very much reflect our spirit and ethos as an organisation. We didn't want it to be demanding. We didn't want it to be too intrusive. We wanted it to be something that really calmly explained to readers why we're important. And I mean, you guys can read this. This was actually something that we saw. You've read 606 articles in the last 4 months. That's something that we introduced just a few months ago. And we've seen a massive uplift in reader support just from that line alone, just from saying to people in a kind of gentle way, By the way, you do use The Guardian a lot. I don't know if you know, but you've read quite a lot of articles, and it would be great if you supported us. So I'll just give you a second to have a look over that so you can see the format of it. We actually changed this quite a lot. So for the obviously for the presidential election, we have managed to increase reader support by quite a big percentage, simply by playing with this language and seeing, readers want to, they'll see the word Joe Biden, they'll see the words Donald Trump, and they'll know it's about the presidential election, and they'll have a little snapshot of how it is that we're covering it and why. Yep. Here are some more examples, as I say, of the kind of ways in which we've altered the language, whether it's A/B testing, or feedback from readers themselves. Will always try and run as many experiments as possible for different news stories. The More People in Italy one, which you can see here on the bottom left, that was a good example of how we made this box feel very tailored to the people that were reading it, as well as the article count one as well. By just saying to people, that you are one of a number of people in a particular country reading us. From what I understand, I think it made people feel quite part of a community of readers where they were, a community of people that cared about the issues that they were facing in their country. And that was something that we saw increase our revenue by quite a big margin. Things like we've got an announcement, a bit of a teaser, a bit of a kind of, drawing people in, trying to get them to read on and hear about the kind of work that we're doing. 5 years of Boris Johnson, again, gives a quick snapshot of the news if you haven't managed to catch up with absolutely every twist and turn. That one was actually put up the day after the general election, and we saw a big uptick from that. Here's an example of the kind of the data that we'll see over a period of time from all of our testing. And if there's a 20% increase from that original kind of basic since you're here message, then we'll see that as significant. We'll class it as significant. Anything that's classed as significant, i.e. has resulted in a 20% uplift, will then be something that we'll test further. We might keep on the site more. And as you can see as well, we have the epic, which is our kind of shorthand word for the little yellow box that I've spoken about. But we also have the banner, which will go across the front page. Got the landing page as well, which is the one that displays all of the different ways in which you can support us. And then that's when the ask for support is in the header of an article as well. So you can see all the different aspects that we have. So the other way in which we try and leverage support is via big fundraisers and dedicated campaigns. You can see some examples of here. So one of the ones that we ran quite recently was a dedicated fundraiser by Guardian Australia. Obviously, Guardian Australia is quite unique within their market. A lot of their news outlets are owned by kind of very wealthy proprietors. A lot of the reporters over there for different organisations are told what they can and can't cover. The Guardian is a very liberal space. I think lots of people have found it very refreshing for that reason. It offers something a bit different. Our Wide Brown Land was a dedicated fundraiser that we ran that focused very much on the environment and looking at ways in which different parts of Australia could be better protected. We weren't promising to do anything more than just make sure that we covered all of the issues pertaining to the different aspects of the environmental crisis over there. And it was something that we saw really surpass expectations, which was very heartening. The Break the Cycle as well, gun violence in America, a massive kind of heartland issue for a lot of our readers over in the States. We've run several editorial campaigns about gun violence, and as I say, there was the knife crime one in Britain as well. So we've got a few examples there of dedicated fundraisers, which again will run across the site for a number of days and weeks, and we'll kind of champion a particular issue that we know is really important to our readers. The Environment Pledge, hopefully some of you will have seen this. We ran this across the site in November 2019, when we announced that we were going to join the ranks of the B Corps. So we wanted to be known as a business that was a force for good. And again, the B Corp certification is something that really takes a holistic look at how different organisations are run. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys about B Corps, but it was we were the first major news organisation to become a B Corp, and we ran that announcement alongside a series of bespoke coverage, which explained what we were promising to do in terms of making sure that we really step up in terms of our coverage of the climate crisis, and that involved a number of things. From changing the way that we use our language, so speaking about obviously climate crisis, as I said, as opposed to just the softer kind of global warming kind of language. We looked at how we use images as well. We felt very much that if we just constantly put polar bears on the front of the website, that it's not a very good way of making the crisis feel close to home and something that can be identified with by readers. So we looked at images as well. We also promised to reach our goal of zero net emissions by 2030. Quite a sort of quite a big and quite a bold promise to make, but one that we saw readers respond to really well. And we updated it just a few weeks ago. And these were some of the pieces that we ran when we updated our promise and updated readers as well on the progress that we had made towards our goals. We explained how we were going to reach those goals. We had a piece from Kath. These pieces always do well when Kath herself, our editor-in-chief, is speaking about the Guardian's mission. And we spoke to readers as well. Obviously, we had the lemon juice, legumes and local activism piece, which went really well. I'm just going to move on because I have just seen the time, and so yeah, the Australian supporter goal as well. Again, similar one. So just so again, a dedicated space to explain to readers about the work that Guardian Australia are doing, and the US end of year appeal. Similar thing, just making sure that readers are educated about the work that the Guardian is doing across over in the States, and giving readers a dedicated space to read about our work. We also every year will publish the working report, just kind of updating readers on what the Guardian is doing. And that seems to be very well received. I am told that we are running out of time for questions. If you have any questions at all, or if there's any aspect of this that you have found interesting, you can email me. It's sophie.zeldin-o'neill@theguardian.com. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I hope that's been interesting.